Why are people watching the show now?
I think from what I'm hearing from people is that Little House on the Prairie is a reminder of when things were simpler for us in our lives.
What really happened to the stars of Little House on the Prairie? It looked like the perfect show. Happy families, cute kids, and simple frontier life. But behind the scenes, it wasn't so simple. Actors were leaving, friendships were breaking, and some walked away without saying goodbye. In this video, we're looking into the real reasons why your favorite characters disappeared from the show. So sit tight, because what you're about to hear is nothing like what you saw on screen.
This looks like a half-pint present.
Pretty big for a half-pint size present.
I don't remember it ever not being fun.
Why do we always have to play Ring Around a Rosie? Because I say so.
The burden of becoming the face of the show. Melissa Gilbert played more than just Laura Ingalls. Her name was Laura Ingalls. Little girl, the moment she stepped foot on that set, she became the heart of Little House on the Prairie. But what began as a dream come true slowly turned into something she hadn't planned for. Stress, duty, and finally, a quiet choice to leave. Things changed as the seasons went on, and Michael Landon, who played Pa and ran the whole show, stopped playing. All eyes were on Melissa at once. She was no longer just a little girl with doll hair running through the fields. It was she who the story was about. She felt like the whole show was on her shoulders. She was the first person on the list. She was the one in charge. That wasn't what she asked for, though. Melissa had grown up on the set, but as she did, she had to ask new questions. What will happen next? Could she play more than just Laura? She had been stuck in this one role for years. Could she break free? She really wanted to find out more. Maybe singing, maybe a movie. There might be something else. It can be hard to break out of that box when you're known all over the world for one thing. After that, the biggest surprise of all was that the show was ending. But no one from the network called her. It's not the makers. It's not the writers. Nothing. Victor French, a cast member, told her the show that shaped her youth was ending all of a sudden, and no one thought she should be told. It really hurt. She didn't let it break her, though. Melissa took the lead. The show was now called Little House, A New Beginning, and she felt like it was hers to carry. She helped end Little House in the most polite way possible by making 3 TV movies that said goodbye to the characters and fans. She stayed until the end and gave it her all. Melissa saw those movies as more than just work. Their tone was personal. They were her way of ending a very important part of her life. She gave everything she had to every scene. It wasn't just about Laura. It was about all the kids who watched her grow up on TV and felt like they were in the same boat. It was really over when the fields of Walnut Grove went away for good. Melissa then did something that no one saw coming. She got out of Hollywood. Not in a big way, with lots of headlines and fuss. She took a quiet step away. She moved into a quiet cottage in the Catskills with her husband, Timothy Busfield. A real-life getaway. Not any lights, not any cams. There were only trees, silence, and the sound of a new life. That move said everything. It was over for her with writing. She wished for peace. She needed some space. Her only wish was to live as Melissa, not as a star or Laura. Before, the girl ran barefoot through golden fields on TV. Now she was walking barefoot in her garden, out of the light. But here's the thing. She wasn't leaving to get away from something bad. There was a better thing to choose. Melanie Gilbert chose to leave Little House on her own. Not because she didn't like it, but because she was too old for it. She showed that leaving doesn't always mean giving up. Sometimes it means growing. Are you ready? Let's look into the real reason Michael Landon made the shocking choice to quit the show he built himself. A creator torn between vision and fatigue. On Little House on the Prairie, Michael Landon was more than just an actor. He was what made the show go, the mind behind the stories, and the one who led the whole thing. He made it clear from the start that this was his path. He played more than just Charles Ingalls. He helped write the scripts, directed important episodes, gave the go-ahead for casting, and made all the determinations. Every sad moment, every teary moment, and every lesson about life in the 80s came from him. It worked like magic at first. The show felt tight and finished because of Landon's direction. He knew what people wanted from a show like Bonanza: warmth, battle, hope, and strength. But every time they did well, there was more pressure. Landon didn't let go of any of his duties. He held on to the reins tighter and tighter as the years went by. Through its 8th season, the show's magic began to wear off behind the scenes. It was getting too much to keep the story fresh, the people believable, and the ratings high for my taste. Landon had to do everything, which cost him. There is no way to avoid burnout when you carry that much intellectual weight for almost a decade. But the work wasn't the only thing that was making him tired. It was the way things were changing. NBC, which was showing Little House, began to have its own thoughts. They wanted the show to change with the times. Brand new people, moving faster. Even though they took place on the frontier, the stories felt more modern. And as Melissa Gilbert's character Laura Ingalls got older, the main relationship in the show started to change. Charles and Laura's relationship as father and daughter had been the show's emotional center. It made the show heartfelt. She was married now, though, and making her own life. Landon then didn't know where his character still fit in. He knew he couldn't keep acting like nothing had changed. When she was younger and had a husband and a baby, the heartfelt scenes between Pa and his little girl didn't hit as hard. That kind of story was no longer interesting. That truth didn't bother Landon because he was too smart and proud of his work. But he didn't let the show go into something that didn't feel right. Instead, he took a risk. He left the center of attention. Charles Ingalls was no longer his role, but the show went on with a new name. Little House, a New Beginning. He was still in charge of the story from behind the camera. There was no sign of him on screen, though. Fans knew it. The tone changed. And there was something about the show that never got better. It wasn't easy to decide to step back, but it had to be done. Landon knew he had to lie if he stayed. He also never lied on Little House. He based that show on being honest, feeling things, and family values. He knew it was time to let go when the heart of it changed. Landon wasn't done making things, though. After only a few years, he started a new series called Highway to Heaven. It made you feel the same way Little House did, but this time it was set in the present day. Landon played an angel who was sent to Earth to help people go through the hardest times in their lives. Even though the tone changed, the message stayed the same. Kindness, hope, and faith are still important. He got excited about this new project again. There was still stress, but the story was new and had more energy. He stopped playing Pa and started exploring bigger ideas. It was also a way to keep the idea of Little House alive without being tied to it. It wasn't loud when Landon left Little House on the Prairie. It wasn't a mess. It was heavy, though. He left something he loved because he knew it had changed. And being strong enough to know when to walk away is hard sometimes. Still, His choice made waves through the whole cast. Now that the show's main star and author was taking a break, what did that mean for everyone else? For those who had been fighting their own private battles, the cracks were already there. There were pay gaps, not enough screen time, and getting more and more creatively frustrated. Karen Grassel, who played Ma, felt that change a lot. She was more than the quiet strength of the Ingalls family. It was her own choice to leave behind the scenes. And unlike Landon, her leaving wasn't just about her creative vision. It was also about being fair. Let's talk about Karen Grassel's fight behind the camera now, and how one of the most famous TV moms ever got the guts to say, "Enough is enough." Fighting for fairness in a man's world. Caroline "Ma" Ingalls was the heart of Little House on the Prairie. Charles Ingalls was the show's strong face. There was more to the character than just the lines that Karen Grassel gave her. She was the one who gave every quiet look, every moment of peace in the middle of chaos, and every scene that needed a strong mother figure. But most people didn't know that Grassel was fighting her own battle behind the scenes. And this fight wasn't cute like the one she had on TV. It looked like everything was fine at first. She had gotten the part of her life. The group was like a big family. And playing Ma gave her the fame that every actor dreams of. But as the years went by, cracks began to show. Even though her character stayed the same, loving, smart, and strong, her value on the set was going down. Karen Grassel learned very quickly that being the show's moral compass didn't mean she was treated equally. When it came to pay, screen time, or contributing to the project, she wasn't getting what she was owed. Grassel was often pushed to the side as the attention was on Michael Landon and the younger stars. The people in charge didn't act like her job was important, but it was. She didn't want to be famous. It was all she wanted. She was an important part of the show, after all. People loved her. People saw their own moms and grandmothers in her calm strength. But when she wasn't on camera, her work was being missed, and each new season made it harder to push aside. Things didn't always stay good between her and Michael Landon. They had been friends at work for a while. Landon liked talented people, and Grassel had a lot of it. But things got tense when she asked for a raise that was fair for someone in her job. It was known that Landon ran a tight ship. He liked having power. It wasn't always a good thing when someone pushed back. Karen Grassel wasn't being unreasonable, but in a field where men hold most of the power, asking for what you're worth might seem like a sign of disobedience. It was even worse that she wanted more than just money. She wanted to be respected. She wanted her character to have more depth, to be a part of more stories, and to really have a say in how the family was shown. But the scripts kept leaning toward casting younger people. Ma stopped being the full, complicated woman Grassel knew she could play and became a soft presence in the corner. In the end, the show went in a completely different way. Karen knew what was going to happen when Michael Landon quit acting and the story turned to Laura's new family. Her job, which she had built up over the years, was no longer important. She wasn't just pushed to the side, she was completely forgotten. She also knew she couldn't keep playing Caroline Ingalls when it didn't feel like her anymore. She didn't wait for a big exit or a show to say goodbye. There was no goodbye shown on screen. She left in silence before the start of Little House, a new beginning. She wasn't gone from her fans' hearts, but she wasn't on the set where she'd given so much of herself either. There was no ending. There is no ending for her character. Karen Grassel wasn't done playing, though. In fact, leaving Little House gave her a chance to start over. She went back to the stage, where it all began. She first loved theater, and now she had time to go back to it. Her own rules let her run a theater company in Santa Fe that she helped to start. Not a network, no scores, just love. She went on tour with plays that were hard for her and let her show off her range. The part she played in Driving Miss Daisy was one of her best and showed that she was more than just Ma. She was a smart, strong, and deep performer. Being fully seen again through her stage work was something she hadn't felt in years. Grassel's leaving wasn't a sign of stopping. It was about taking back. She picked pride over ease and growth over staying the same. And it wasn't easy for a woman working in TV at that time to make that choice. But it was brave. The tragedy queen who'd had enough. At first, Mary Ingalls was just like any other girl from the backwoods. Strange things would happen if you watched her journey on Little House on the Prairie. When the story needed a sad part, Mary was the first one to get it. The scarlet fever took away her sight. In a fire, she lost a child. Heartbreak kept putting her marriage to the test. It got worse and worse every season, and Melissa Sue Anderson was the one who carried all of that pain. At first, she was up for the task. To play Mary, I had to dig deep and go places that other actors didn't. But being the show's go-to for disaster for years got to her. It wasn't just the character who was worn out from the tears, the sadness, and the writing that felt more like punishment than story. It was Anderson, too. She didn't try to hide how she felt. She talked about how her job was done in interviews. She said the writers must have thought, "What awful thing can we do to Mary this season?" That wasn't a joke either. She really meant it. Playing the victim all the time wasn't satisfying anymore. It was holding me back. She didn't get bigger. While the rest of the group moved on to new stories, lighter moments, and more variety, she was stuck in a loop of grief and loss. It was Melissa's last season on the show, and she knew something had to change. She loved acting, but she didn't want to be remembered as the sad, blind girl for all time. So she did something smart and planned. She hired Jay Bernstein, a famously strong manager who works with stars who make headlines for being brave. The goal wasn't to become famous all over again. It was about picking out the next job she wanted. It was clear to her what she didn't want. No pictures of teen idols, not any bubblegum roles, not wearing a short skirt and a TV show to become the next it girl. She had already played a 22-year-old on Little House. She had no plans to go back. She wanted to be known as a real actress who could play complex adult roles. She didn't leave the show with a lot of drama, but she did cry. It was a personal scene between her and Michael Landon, the man who had directed, played with her, and helped shape her performance for years. Mary wasn't the only one saying goodbye to Pa. Melissa was going to leave Landon, the set, and a part of herself that had grown up in front of millions of people. She would say years later that those scenes weren't played. She really did cry. It wasn't just the end of an episode. She was starting something new. She knew it would be tough. She knew she was ready, though. When she quit Little House on the Prairie, she didn't quit playing. It just meant beginning over. Following this, Melissa tried out new parts in TV movies, plays, and guest spots that let her show off her skills. She stuck to her choice. No filler, no shortcuts. Just important work that showed she had more than one job. Melissa Sue Anderson made sure that Mary Ingalls wouldn't be the only part of her story, but it will always be a part of it. Not like a child star trying to hold on, she walked off with her head held high, like a young woman making her way through life. Outgrowing the villainous Nellie Oleson. It could be said that Nellie Oleson was the heart of Little House on the Prairie. Fans really liked how Allison Arngrim played her because she was so smart and snarky. She was rude, selfish, and full of drama, and she stole every scene she was in. She was very different from the sweet but suffering Ingalls family, and Arngrim knew just how to insult and smirk at her. By season 6, Nellie's personality had changed quickly. The two of them fell in love and got married. The edge began to fade at that point. The crazy anger, the crazy fights, and the chaos all calmed down. She was now married and would soon be a mom. Nellie was changed by the writers, and while that may have looked like growth on paper, something was lost in the process. Nellie was no longer Nellie. She kept quiet, home-based, safe. And that wasn't fun or interesting for Arngrim. When season 7 came around, she changed in some way. She began to think about the future. She would be close to 30 years old by the end of another 4-year contract. That meant they played the same person for 14 years. Could she really do that? Could she stay stuck in her 20s in the curls and cattiness of a person she didn't know? She didn't want to, which was a hard truth to hear as long as Nellie wasn't going to be put into a dull story. Not if there wasn't a chance to be creative. Not if she had to see herself turn into a background version of the most entertaining part of the show. NBC offered to keep her on for 4 more years at the same pay and under the same terms. No pay raise, no promises of creativity, no room for error. You can leave it or take it. It felt like a slap to someone who had helped make the show a hit. She didn't want a parade. She just wanted to be noticed. The network wouldn't move, though, so Arngrim did something that most people wouldn't have. She walked. No, she said. Not because she wasn't going to move on. It wasn't because she didn't care, but because she cared more about her future than being safe. Not only was that choice brave, it was also very uncommon. Even more so in a business where young stars often stay in the spotlight for too long. But her exit was quiet. It's too quiet. There wasn't a big goodbye. There was no big send-off for Nellie. One short line in the script says that Nellie and Percival went to New York to take over the store that his family owned. And then, one of the most famous characters on the show was gone, leaving no other way to say goodbye. She did come back once for an episode in season 9 called The Return of Nellie. It was just a flash of the old spark and drive. It wasn't the same, though. Things had changed with the show. She was different now. Even that return felt more like remembering something than coming back to life. Arngrim did leave more than just a role behind, though. She warned people that just because you're famous on screen doesn't mean you'll be treated fairly in real life. And there are times when leaving is the only way to protect who you are as an actor and as a person. The pilgrimage or the protest? People really liked making fun of Harriet Oleson. Katherine McGregor played her with a spark that made every scene into its own show. She was loud, nosy, and always making trouble in Walnut Grove. She added humor and chaos, and she was the perfect bad girl for small-town life. Fans couldn't wait for the film Little House on the Prairie, Farewell, which showed her last scenes on the show. She didn't show up, though. The news had an easy answer. They said McGregor couldn't make it because he was on a spiritual journey in India. It seemed calm and maybe even romantic. But the real story was darker and more in-depth. Katherine had been holding on to something for years behind the scenes, being bitter. Not because of her role or lines, but because of how she felt about Michael Landon, who ran the show. Karen Grassel's autobiography says that McGregor's pain didn't go away quickly. It was very deep. In fact, it was so deep that she couldn't bring herself to go back for the last goodbye. It wasn't that she didn't care, but that she did care too much. She was hurt too much to act like everything was fine. Over time, things were getting worse between her and Landon. A big reason? Handle. Katherine often changed the way she talked. She used to work in theater and wanted Harriet to sound real, not like she was trying too hard. As the show, where one man wrote, edited, and directed, making changes to the plot didn't go over well. It turned into a quiet war of wills as she tried to shape her character. Landon didn't like being pushed. She also didn't like being fired. She kept going, though, and her acts became part of the show's history. Harriet was more than just a jokester. She was an important part of what made Little House feel real. But McGregor never felt fully appreciated for what she brought to the table, even after years of work. So when it was time for the last time to get the whole cast together, she picked peace over acting. She didn't take off. She didn't record any scenes. There was something wrong with the finish that made her want to leave. Skipping the last bow said it all for someone who put so much into the show. That wasn't a snub. It was self-defense. She didn't try to get more movie parts after Little House. She picked a quieter life instead by teaching kids how to act in Los Angeles. Far away from the stress, away from the fight. Still making art and performing, but on her own terms. Even without that last scene, her legacy lived on. She knew what she did for the show. The fans also knew. But her exit wasn't the only one that made her sad. Because the departure of one star not only changed the show, but it also broke up a friendship. Victor French's choice to leave had the most impact on Michael Landon. The next thing that happened wasn't just casting, it was about them. A friendship torn by career choices. Victor French was always an important part of Little House on the Prairie. He brought something honest and raw to the role of Isaiah Edwards. He wasn't well-groomed or quiet. He was a rough-edged, tough-as-nails mountain man who showed that nice people could have mean hearts. Fans loved him because he gave the show grit, fun, and emotional weight. But French wasn't feeling the same love behind the scenes. He felt pushed to the side after years of being an important part of the show. Like a lot of the other actors, he wasn't getting the credit or pay that fit how important he was. He also paid attention when a new chance came along. He could be the star of his own show, Carter Country. A totally different tone, a whole new stage, and the chance to lead something himself. The French took them up on their offer. It was a brave move, but it costs something. It wasn't good for Michael Landon. French was handpicked by Landon to play Edwards. They were close on and off the set. It didn't feel like business when the French left without Landon's permission. It felt close to home. Landon got back to him quickly. He didn't just take French off the show. He took his whole TV family out of the story, making it seem like they had never been there. There was real damage. A bond that was once based on trust and working together became cold and distant. Landon felt lied to. The French thought they were squished, and the show lost a character that a lot of people saw as the emotional center of the group. After many years, they got back in touch. When Landon made Highway to Heaven, he brought Victor French back as more than just a co-star. He became a trusted friend and a creative partner.
Partner? You are going to be my partner in a black and white unit?
They worked together again, but this time they understood each other better and started over. Everything that happened on Little House stayed in the past. French wasn't being selfish when he chose to leave. It was brave. In order to be more creative, he made a big move that hurt some people. In the end, though, that risk gave him new jobs, new growth, and a friendship that was stronger than ever because both men still valued what they had built together. The actors who left are no longer in the story, but the story lives on. As the cast left one by one, something else was going on below the surface. A show that had been impossible to touch was slowly falling apart. And when the show was over, Little House didn't just end, it blew up. If you enjoyed this deep look, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. And hey, don't leave yet. Click the next video popping up on your screen. You'll love it.